Before I start, I just want to say best of luck to England's ladies. Hopefully we'll win the World Cup, bring it home with us, and it will be a good game to watch. But anyway, on with the show. Good afternoon, ladies, gents, Pikachus and soccer mums. Oh yes, today it's the ladies' World Cup football final, or soccer if you're in America final. It's England and we're playing Spain, so that'll be cool. It's on at 11 British time, 11 a.m. British time. So I don't know anyone who's actually going to watch it apart from myself and my mum, who doesn't really watch football, but she likes women's sport. She's all about feminism, of course. So yeah, I thought now is a brilliant time to discuss women's football. Probably going to go in unpopular opinions this, I know that. And the reason is well, let's look at some footage first to see what the public opinion is on women's football. So let's not shoot the messenger. This is not me saying this is the TV, this is the media saying this, okay? Let's take it away. To get us through the turnstiles, let's have a look at the revolution versus traditional approaches to pro football and supporting it as a long-term thing.
I actually do watch some of the games, but generally I don't, because I find the standard to be too low compared to the men's version, which is the pinnacle of the game.
Harsh words. But it's obviously a fact, it's a true fact, and the reason is, well, I think anyway, the men's game in this country is like 400-500 years old. It's a really old game. There's a lot of experience there. They've had a lot of time to iterate and update it and, improvise into something which works really well, makes loads of money.
That's the same reason I don't watch men's lower league football, because it's just not that good too. Anyone who says different is lying to you and to themselves. Yet, with the women's game, and indeed their World Cup, we're being fed positive yet misleading statements and facts to make us all believe that women's football is now super popular.
The women's game, really, the professional women's game, started at the end of the 90s, so we've had 2000, 2010, 2020. Maximum amount of development time, 30 years. Half of one person's life. So, when he says it's the pinnacle of the game, what he means is, like, in the pinnacle of the military is a nuclear bomb. It doesn't mean it's just better than everything and we should throw everything else away and never use it again. It just means in terms of a relative level of, like, technological advancement, that's the top and you're down here. It's true fact. Obviously, that's an unpopular opinion, though.
Women's World Cup organiser FIFA claimed ticket sales for this year's event will make it the most attended standalone women's sporting event in history, but they failed to inform us that thousands of tickets have been given away for free.
Obviously, if you can count, the numbers don't quite add up there. So when you get these feminist campaigners and speakers on the subject saying women's footballers and women's sports people should be paid equally to the men's, that's a very socialist view. If you're the person paying for that and you're the person trying to make a business out of it, that's not going to wash. It just won't. There's not enough money.
Because of low ticket sales. They also didn't like to admit that tickets to the greatest tournament on earth are going for as little as £5 a pop.
It's like 40% of the profit of a club goes to paying the players when it's men's football, but like 70 to 80% of the profit will pay for women when it's the women's game, because they actually get paid a bigger percentage of the profit, but because the profit's so vastly fewer or less amount, the resulting salary is going to be less. So it's not sexism. It's not like they're purposefully doing that. It's just the economics of the thing. If what we really want is equality, then I think we need to fairly assess the men's and the women's game. That seems to be where this is going. So let's have a look. In fact, that's quite interesting on its own. Usually, if I'm covering a football game, I'll do a video about that. But even though I'm kind of watching this, I'm only watching the commentary, and I don't think it's going to be worth doing a video on it. And this is the most popular way of me doing a video on it, is me discussing it. BBC love covering women's football, so this is probably one of the better places to look. Weirdly, I don't use BBC for a lot else, really. So, I mean, just looking at the lineup, I don't recognise many of the players. Some of the England players I do recognise, and they're kind of famous over here, but that's it. None of the Spanish ones are that well known. And, I mean, even looking at the way the teams are set up, England are using a 7-3. 7 defensive players and 3 attackers. I've never seen that before. Spain just went with a 4-3-3, was what you'd expect. The team that lost out to England in the semi was Australia, who we beat 3-1 in the last game. So if we have a look at the stats for that game, we can see if anyone scored, who was playing well, and if it follows the men's game logic, then these people here, if they're not injured, we'd expect them to play well in this final. So yeah, safe bet if they're fielded. If there's goals, which there will be, they will be involved. Although I would expect England to concede against Spain as well. So probably 1-1, 2-1 extra time. That would be my, guesswork sort of prediction. We're going slightly off topic here anyway, so I'm going to finish my coverage of BBC's coverage, my repeating of repeating, but just keep in mind objectivity and equality is the point of this next section, so here goes. To begin with, I feel like there are things that women's football does do better than the men's already. I feel like rival players treat each other better generally, apart from when they lash out. When they lash out, it's generally worse, but it's far and few between. So, you'll see some of that. It's quite some funny footage. But the other thing I like to point out is the women don't react very well to failure. Like with the men, okay, they'll roll about to try and win something off the ref, but they're not doing it because they're emotionally scarred. They actually don't care. So it's kind of jarring to see a professional level game, people crying because they got knocked down. It didn't really get hit that hard, and getting the wrong card. Oh my God, that's a terrible one. And she finds that hilarious. But anyway, back on the point. When it comes to women's football, and the reason they don't get paid as much, and I think the reason it isn't as popular as it should be, is because they are trying to be better than the men's game, but they're trying to do it in the ways which men are naturally beating them. They're trying to be bigger and stronger than the men, effectively, and it isn't going to work. It certainly won't wash with the general public, when, like I said, the main commentators and the main speakers on women's football claim that there's no fouling, the fair play's great, everything's dandy, there's no diving. They use the men's game as a scapegoat in order to prop up and, lofty the aspirations of the women's game, but it's completely unfair. Reverse roles, it'd be misogynist. Anyway. Ironically, as I'm recording this, Spain have scored against the run of play. So just at the end of the first half, England are 1-0 behind. And they're now going to have to make some changes at the break. But that should be simple work, since they pretty much got all their good attacking players on the bench for some reason. Oh, I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to grind out a 1-0 win like the men would do. Seems like a bad decision, though, and now they're 1-0 behind. So, okay, let's throw the plan out the window. Plan B is going to be throw all the defenders back on the bench and throw all the attackers on. You can immediately see the problem here. There's no strategy.
When it comes to the fundamentals of football, passing, striking, controlling the ball, I admit the very best female players are experts at that. But the advantage that men have is down to their naturally stronger, faster, more explosive movements. That's why the men's game is more physical, it's quicker, it's more entertaining. So why are the powers that be doing such a disservice to women by overhyping the interest in their game?
Well, that one's pretty easy to answer. I think overhyping the game is what companies do, commercial people do. They overhype everything they're trying to sell because overhyping works. So I think that's the principal reason why they're doing it. But I mean, there's a lot of political reasons why they're pushing this as well, and that I think is why the integrity of the campaign has vanished. I mean, it's like saying, oh, this is the greatest female football sporting event ever. They've sold all the tickets. It's amazing. And then you look at the pictures. It's like, well, the stands are empty and the tickets were free. It's like, don't lie, because it just makes everyone involved look bad. But if you actually look on the pitch, it's, if the pitch was smaller and less wide, this would be a really action-packed game. There's just so many slow sprints in between. Because unlike the men, they don't have that burst of pace. It's 30% less muscle density, so they don't have the muscles in the legs to actually explode into pace like that. And herein lies the problem. Biological essentialism. It's effectively evil at the moment. Biological fact is sexist. So when you combine all of those factors, it just isn't it's not a very attractive proposition for entertainment. Add to that, it's completely paid for by the men's game and the fans of the men's game. You've got a pretty weird situation that's not looking positive.
It can't be for money because the women's game loses cash and is heavily subsidised by the men's game. Women's football has become that taboo topic which we're not allowed to criticise or speak about honestly, like trans women in sport, for example.
Once again, an objective observer would be able to tell you there's several really obvious and good, solid reasons why the women's game doesn't make any money and needs to be paid for by the men's game, which it complains about. First of all, they've put their flag posts in the ground amongst a set of niche politics, which attracts investment from those particular politics and people that support that. But the rest of the planet and all the big companies and everyone who wants to make money and, you know, have a long-term plan, they will avoid this because that niche is against the majority. And that's who they're trying to sell to, the majority of people. Aside from that, they drain the fun out of it. A lot of the fun, and I'm sorry, this is true as well, even though it's not going to sound good. A lot of the fun in watching women's matches is watching the outtakes, you know, the parody pieces, the falling over and stuff like that. It is funny, but they don't show you that. They hide all of that stuff, so you can't see it. And then when you're watching the highlights, you're just watching, you know, just boring stuff. So it's like, don't drain the fun out of it. Capitalise on the good bit, you know, despite your ego. And the standard of officiation is just terrible as well, so that doesn't help either. And finally, there isn't a lot of video replays, so a lot of this stuff you get away with during the match, and then they pick up on it afterwards. But I mean, considering the loud protestations from the public speakers and celebrities on women's football, I do think they need to have a disciplinary meeting at the very least. And this again is an issue that stems from them trying to emulate the men's game. It might sound misogynist or sexist to some, but I mean it wasn't. At the end of the 90s, when I was actually in direct talks with these women who weren't actually famous yet, who were just playing football, you know, at the weekend, and I was saying things to them like, this could be the biggest sport on earth. Women's football, especially British and American, could be huge. You need to capitalise on the things which are appealing and the things which are going to bring you good exposure and profit. You know, the things that are going to put you on the map, the same as the men did. But rather than doing it just like the men, you know, it'd be a trailblaze, wouldn't it? Be a new wave of sports interest with women's football. And let's be honest, if you're considering 100% of the world who you are trying to sell these football matches to televised, who in other countries is going to watch a bunch of women dressing as male footballers? That's how they see it across the world, largely. Women dressing as male footballers, playing a substandard of football with poor officiation, and the replays don't even show you the bits that you want to see. It's just, like I say, it's a completely unappealing package. So, I mean, giving it away for free is going to bump your numbers up, but people aren't engaged. They're not enjoying it. They're not watching. You know, they'll just turn up because it's, oh, I was there. So despite their egos, I think the women, they would make more of these funny bits, you know, the humorous side of it. They put more personality into it and focus less on the technical and the physical elements, which we've already seen. They're not doing as well as the men, ever, unless they're all on steroids. And even then, it's possibly not going to be as good. So, smaller pitches, nicer uniforms that are like more stretchy and just don't look, they just look awkward. You know, it's a different shaped body. They're not designed for a woman's body. And I think some rule changes. Make the goal bigger, or nominate a defender who can also touch the ball but can't pick it up outside the area. There's tons of things you could do. However, things being what they are, could've, would've, shoulda, isn't going to help you now. They need to do these things despite their egos. So let's have a look at why they haven't or they won't.
We're patronising women by ignoring the flaws in the game. I want women's game to grow. And that's going to take time, but we can't force it down people's throats in an act of rapid revolution because society now thinks that we should. If you really want to see the female game improve, you have to buy into it properly. Posting a few tweets every time there's a World Cup, that's not enough. When those women go back to their domestic clubs, you need to buy tickets to watch them play in both home and away games. Your support must be like the men's game. Until that happens, all we will keep seeing is women footballers as second-class citizens.
So now we've conclusively looked at the kind of male side of the argument, you know, if you like the logical side of the argument. So now, let's have a look at the female commentators which I've been mentioning and some of the clips relating to what they think. Brace yourselves, this could get messy. Trigger warning, or disclaimer, so here we go. Having a little look back over at the game that was playing, England have fallen behind, so it's 1-0 Spain. Just at the end of half-time, so it's not looking good. There's a bit of a panic in the England dugout. So yeah, it's uncertain what's going to happen. But this is indicative of what has been said. And the women will not accept the truth of it, whereas the men, they have to be realistic. If the manager tells them, you suck for these reasons, they have to take that on board and then improve. Otherwise, they just will get sacked. It's not quite like that in the women's game. There's not the same talent pool, and you can't really sack a woman footballer as such. So anyway, let's carry on with the footage.
These women are playing their guts off. They fall down, they get up. Men, football players in the Premier League are idiots on the field and off the field, and they are overpaid. They fall, they dive, they play act, and they're disgusting. Women football, they play the game with courage, with determination.
Have you
watched? And guess what? No play acting.
Have you watched the Women's World Cup?
They're amazing. And guess what? At least they got far. Where did the men's... Where
they
did
got
England...
far. They got far against other women. It's not the same.
And England men's football team, where did they get, JJ? What have they ever won, JJ? What have they won?
She's dropped the ball a bit there, if you'll excuse the pun. England have won a World Cup. So, but it's not comparable. It's a daft comparison, really, if you ask me.
What has the England football male team won? Nothing.
Good grief.
The women's has won.
All right, put a sock in it for a second.
Oh, JJ. Yeah, I don't usually like his style, but I mean, that had to be said, didn't it? Put a sock in it, woman. So this is what they're going to come up against. You have to get out of these old stereotypes, you know, and play to your crowd. You know, it's not the same as arguing with your boyfriend.
I told no lies. You'll be offended, but I'm speaking facts. Narinda?
I'm just astounded at everything you've just said. Like, how dare you?
Wait, what?
I've been saving the best for last, so I will, without further ado, let you hear the other side of the feminine argument, which is good.
Esther.
The thing, I made the point that I don't watch women's football. That doesn't mean I don't watch women's sports. I watch women's tennis, I watch women's athletics, I watch women's gymnastics. There's a reason why I prefer to watch, for instance, women's gymnastics over men's gymnastics. And no one ever makes noise about that. No one ever says, oh, it's not fair to the men that has to only watch women's gymnastics. Here's the issue with women's football. The pitches are too big. The goalkeepers look like children.
Yeah.
She nailed it. The goalies look like children. That's so true. It's exactly what I said earlier. Bigger goals and smaller pitches it condenses the game more. Because they're training them to stand off like 15 feet. But that's because a man can run 15 feet quickly. A woman can't. You need to stand at 8 feet, really. Anyway, let's carry on.
They don't have the width span of the male football goalkeepers.
Well, I know size matters to you, Esther, but
well, size matters to you.
We know that about
I can confirm that. No, but this is the thing. But it affects the optics of the game because the thing is, if you don't have a pitch that fits the size and the speed of the athlete, it's like watching football in slow motion.
Again, that's a perfect description. If you think about it, it's like watching a FIFA slow motion replay. That's what watching women's football is like currently. So coupled to all the other political stuff that puts people off, that's the reason it doesn't do well. It's nothing to do with men or sexism. It just isn't.
Their passes take longer. You know, the football, the goalkeepers are not as effective. It's not about being sexist or not wanting support. It's just, it doesn't look good. It's not a good game to watch.
I just think that's very unfair to say because actually, you know, when you go to a women's football, it's kinder, the crowds are nicer. It's a family feel.
Yeah,
men's football
but we still have
is
eyes.
full of racism. It's full of violence. They're fighting. You know what? Men's football, they are hooligans.
How fucking insidious is that? I can't believe she said that. That's like me saying, oh, the Saudi Arabian women's team are all a bunch of whores just because they're women. That's what she's doing. She's saying because they're men, they must be hooligans and racist and disgusting.
Women's, it's family, it's
What's your
nice
point?
and correct.
What's your point?
I'll be honest.
They're an embarrassment to the rest of the world.
I love seeing male football games because the energy and the stadium is honestly electric.
Listen.
A room full of testosterone.
Abusive.
Okay, but Nerida, forget about what's happening off the pitch because you're going to get racism at football games. Unfortunately, that's part of society. But let's talk about actual women's football.
It's sad they have to treat it this way. The best of all time, they're only counting, as we've said, the last 30 to 40 years of all time. They're not counting the last 500 years like the men's do. Again, it's the overhyping, it's the PR campaign that's failing. Anyway.
The best women's national team of all time, arguably,
is
the USA. Yeah, USA women's national team,
right.
Fantastic. They've won more trophies than anyone else, okay? They lost to under 15 boys team. That means they played boys who are aged 13 to 15 and they lost.
So
they also played, no, let me finish. They also played Wrexham. You know Wrexham, the team that's owned by Ryan Reynolds? They're barely a professional outfit. They lost 12-0 to them just 2-3 months ago.
So?
That's a shocker. I didn't know that. I had to actually check that on Google to see if it was accurate. But it just makes you think, doesn't it? Why are they drawing all this bad attention to themselves on purpose? They're highlighting the worst bit of themselves and the worst bit of the sport. This is almost like the CCP doing propaganda videos about what food they have. It's really ill-advised. It's just, don't do it.
So my point is this.
It's terrible.
But England have never lost to other teams. England, the male England team, have
England
not lost.
England men's team have never lost to a women's football team. They've never lost to under 15-year-old girls. That's never happened.
That doesn't matter.
And that's the end of the civilised discussion. So I could say, see you next time, guys, ladies, gents, Pikachus, blah, blah, the end of it, bye. And just end the video there. And that's, I think, what the intended effect is. They can't argue logically. They don't have a leg to stand on. But listen to the other one. She has some sense.
That doesn't matter. That's the whole point.
It doesn't matter.
That's the whole point.
That's just a little thing in the whole big.
Now you're
the
being
big
disingenuous.
scheme. The big scheme of
being
things.
disingenuous.
We need to encourage women playing football.
There is no
inspire
encouragement to hide the fact that it's terrible.
Yeah, I think I'll rush to the conclusion now. I could show you a lot more footage from that conversation, but it just degenerates. And I think it's a shame. And that's really, it comes to the point why I made this video. For me, football is amazing. Whether it's women playing it or it's men playing it, football's just a great game. I like football. And I think it doesn't get less great just because someone's playing it who's not as strong or as fit. But I think the format, the actual offering of the experience of watching and enjoying, or supposedly enjoying, women's football, it's just crap. Like, just be honest about it. That's why you need to give away free tickets to see a half-empty stadium. And I don't see how you can encourage women more to play football than to give it to them for free and then fill up stadiums with, you know, as many people as you can and promote it all over the place. Encouraging women to play football isn't the thing that is missing here. That's already happening. I think we need to encourage people who are into football to watch football more. And that doesn't mean we need to give money to the women. No, we need to have an effect on the fans. The fans need to be interested to come back because they've now had a look. It's like the game tonight, the England game tonight, which they unfortunately lost 1-0. It wasn't a full stadium. But can you imagine England-Spain men's final being that close geography-wise, not being completely sold out? It just wouldn't happen. And that's not because the men are so muscular. You know, it isn't because of that. It's just the whole package, the experience of following England. Even though the England team aren't that great. Okay, they won one in 1966. Haven't won anything since. So it would be fair enough to say, okay, the women's England team are more successful than the men's team. But regardless of that, I don't want to watch the women's team. I would rather have the commentary there. Just keep an eye on what the result is. So like I say, smaller pitches, you know, all the other things that I said, I'm not going to go over them. And other people have said really great ideas as well. But they've got initiative. It's like, stop holding the game back. Whoever is organising it, managing it, it's like, stop holding the game back. It's, you know, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. So, yeah, I think that's the end of it for now. I'm glad I didn't do a live commentary of the game because it wasn't 1-1, it was 1-0 against. So I would have got that one wrong. But I'm glad that I did this video to highlight the fact that there are good things about women's football, despite what's been said and going on. And I'm sure the highlights video that come out for today's game, if they pull out all the good bits and just show you those, it's good. But like I say, they need to cut out all the long, boring, you know, slow sprints, the treacle football, as the lady put it. Not me, that's what a lady in the media said who watches football. And then they can expect the game to improve as a spectacle, not as something that you can go and play as a woman. That's already cool. You know, they copied the men's and they tweaked it here and there. Cool, it's good. It needs to be better for the fans. Me, you know, misogynist cavemen that you hate, feminists, you need to sell to us now. So that would be my advice. If you want the game to outmuscle the men's, you could. We'd like it to. God knows there's loads of people, loads of men, including myself, who think that would be awesome if we could go and watch football and it was actually just chicks. So if that's what you want and you're going to give it to us, we'll pay for it. But currently it's, you know, it's not good enough. It just isn't. It's not because the players aren't skillful enough. It's not because the passion's not there, or it's none of the sexism or anything like that. It's simply because the matchday experience as a fan sucks. So you can't give it away. So improve that, and we'll all flood in and we'll all support women's football to the hilt, and we'll forget about the men's game because we're sexist. We prefer watching chicks than we do watching other guys. Well, most of us do anyway. So they're certainly the ones that go to the football matches. But that's another video, so I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. No fake outs this time, it really is the end. So I'll see you in the next one. If you're interested in women's football, I would suggest looking at the foreign leagues, but not the ones you'd expect. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, these kind of places, you wouldn't expect, but they have got good women's football. So check it out, and I'll see you in the next one.